It was the 5th year of my IVF journey. I had just taken my 97th hormone shot when my husband, Marcus, brought home a 7-year-old boy. The boy had Marcus's exact eyes. He stepped into our house, looking at me with terrified eyes. Daddy said this is my home now. Chloe, are you going to kick me out? A paternity test sat on the coffee table, confirming their biological relationship. With red eyes, Marcus explained to me that the child was conceived during the single month we had broken up 8 years ago. He insisted I was the only woman he had ever loved. He just couldn't bear to miss out on his son's childhood. From that day on, my home office was turned into a kid's bedroom. Our IVF savings were redirected to pay for the boy's ear surgery. Even my egg retrieval procedure, which I had waitlisted 6 months for, had to be cancelled so Marcus could attend the boy's school open house. Later, the boy ate something he was allergic to. Hannah, his mother, pointed at me and screamed in tears, "Chloe, just because you can't get pregnant doesn't mean you get to poison my son." Marcus scooped up the convulsing child, and for the first time in our 9 years together, pushed me away. "You've disappointed me, Chloe." That night, I sat alone in the hospital, signing my own surgical consent form with one hand, and a set of divorce papers with the other. Since he was so eager to be someone else's father, I no longer needed to ruin my body trying to make him one. Before all of this, I had spent 5 long years preparing to become a mother. The next morning, I crouched on the bathroom floor, carefully placing the used needles into a biohazard disposal box. The hormone injections made my abdomen bloat. My waist was covered in black and blue bruises, and even bending over slightly sent a sharp pain through my lower back. The door was suddenly pushed open. 7-year-old Leo stood outside, staring at my stomach. "Mommy said only broken women who can't have babies need to get poked with needles every day." My hand froze. Hannah rushed over, immediately pulling the boy behind her. "I'm so sorry, Chloe. Leo doesn't know any better. Please don't take a child's words to heart." She apologized with her mouth, but her arms were wrapped protectively around Leo's chest, as if she expected me to lose my mind and hit him. Marcus stood in the hallway, looking exhausted. He hadn't slept at all last night. His shirt was wrinkled, and his jaw was covered in dark stubble. He just found out I'm his dad. He's confused and scared. "Don't pick a fight with him right now." I snapped the lid of the disposal box shut. "I'm not blaming the child." Hannah smiled weakly. "That's good. I was so worried you wouldn't be able to accept him. Any woman who has struggled with infertility for years would feel devastated to suddenly find out her husband has a 7-year-old son." Her words sounded sympathetic, but they were carefully designed to twist the knife in my heart. Marcus frowned. "Hannah, take Leo to the kitchen and get some breakfast." Hannah took the boy's hand and left. Once the door closed, Marcus knelt in front of me. He gently pressed a clean cotton ball against my fresh injection site, a gesture he had done 100 times before. "Does it still hurt today?" I stared at his hands. These hands had given me dozens of injections. They had held me tightly after every failed embryo transfer, promising me that we would succeed next time. "When did you find out about Leo?" I asked. 3 weeks ago." His hand went rigid. "Hannah contacted me first. I was afraid she was lying, so I ran 2 separate DNA tests. The results were the same." "So you kept me in the dark for 3 weeks. You had just started your cycle. The doctor specifically said you needed to avoid emotional stress." Marcus gripped my hand tightly. "I wanted to wait until your egg retrieval was finished. I didn't want this to ruin your chances. My husband has a 7-year-old son, and I don't even get to decide when I learn the truth?" He opened his mouth, searching for words. "Chloe, I only wanted to protect you." I had heard that phrase too many times. Now, keeping a secret child from me for 3 weeks was also classified as protection. I pulled my hand back from his grip. Marcus was silent for a moment before pulling a printout of a rental listing from his pocket. "Leo needs surgery on his ears. Hannah just got divorced and has no place to stay in the city. I told them they could stay in our guest room for 2 weeks. As soon as the apartment across the street is ready, they will move out." 2 weeks. "I promise." He added quickly, "Hannah is in the guest room. Leo is in the study. There is absolutely nothing between Hannah and me. Taking care of my son is my responsibility, but you are the only one I chose to spend my life with." I agreed. The child had nothing to do with what happened 8 years ago. He didn't choose to be born into this mess. But that night, when I went to the study to retrieve my pharmacy textbooks, the door was locked from the inside. Leo was crying loudly in the room. "I want Daddy. I want Daddy." That night, Marcus stayed in the study, comforting him until morning. When I got home from work the next day, the study had been completely cleared out. All of my textbooks, medical journals, and study notes had been packed into 6 cardboard boxes and stacked on the balcony. My IVF tracking charts, medical reports, and 5 years of embryo ultrasound photos were all shoved carelessly into those boxes. I rummaged through them for an hour, but couldn't find the very first ultrasound from our failed embryo transfer. Hannah was busy putting dinosaur sheets on the twin bed in the room. She glanced at me over her shoulder. Are you looking for that black and white printout? I thought it was just junk mail, so I threw it in the trash. That was my medical record. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not familiar with IVF stuff. She dropped the bedsheet, her eyes instantly welling with tears. I know Leo and I shouldn't have come here to ruin your life, but he hasn't been able to hear well for years. He cries every night, asking why all the other kids have dads. We are only staying for 2 weeks. Can't you just bear with us? My entire life was packed into cardboard boxes on the freezing balcony. And yet, I was the one being asked to bear with it. The doorbell rang. Marcus's mother, Helen, walked in carrying 2 large shopping bags. The moment she saw Leo, tears streamed down her face. The boy looked so much like Marcus. She held Leo, kissing his cheeks over and over, her hands trembling with excitement. Thank God. The Miller family finally has an heir. The moment the words left her mouth, she looked at me, her expression instantly turning awkward. Chloe, dear, I didn't mean it like that. I know, I replied quietly. During dinner, Helen kept piling food onto Leo's plate. She used to accompany me to my hospital visits. When our first embryo transfer failed, she had sat by my bedside for 3 days, cooking for me and scolding Marcus for not taking better care of his wife. But now, staring at her biological grandson, all of that past affection evaporated into nothing. Helen got up to get juice from the fridge and noticed the IVF calendar stuck to the door. She peeled it off and stuck Leo's school schedule in its place. Now that we have Leo, you two don't need to put yourselves through that torture anymore. Chloe has taken so many shots, her body is practically ruined anyway. I reached out and took the calendar back from her hand. This cycle has already started. I can't stop now. Grandma, I don't want a baby brother or sister. Leo dropped his spoon, crying out. Mommy said if Daddy has a new baby, he won't love me anymore. Hannah quickly covered his mouth. Shh, Leo, don't speak nonsense. I never said that. Marcus's face darkened. Hannah, stop feeding the kid these ideas. I'm just worried about his security. Hannah lowered her head, tears dripping into her bowl. He's 7 years old and only just met his father. Is he not even allowed to be scared? The dining table fell into a tense silence. Leo, sensing the heavy atmosphere, wrapped his arms tightly around Marcus's arm. Daddy, will you stay with me forever? Marcus rubbed the boy's head gently. Yes, buddy. Will there be other kids in this house? Marcus looked at me. In those few seconds of hesitation, I already had my answer. Not for now, Marcus said quietly. I squeezed the IVF calendar in my hand, the sharp edges of the paper digging deep into my palm. That night, my phone buzzed with a billing notification from the fertility clinic. I opened our joint savings account. $6,000 was missing. The transfer note read, Leo's surgery deposit. Marcus walked out of the shower and stopped in his tracks when he saw my phone screen. Leo has a benign tumor in his inner ear. The doctor recommended immediate surgery, so I paid the deposit. That was our budget for the egg retrieval and embryo cultivation. I said, my voice flat. I know. Why didn't you ask me before transferring the money? Marcus sat on the edge of the bed. I'll replace the money. I already listed my car on eBay. The buyer is coming next week. Then why didn't you sell the car first? Leo's surgery date couldn't wait. But my body can? He rubbed his temples, looking incredibly exhausted. Chloe, your IVF cycle can be pushed back a month. If Leo delays his surgery, his hearing could be permanently damaged. Every single one of his arguments made perfect sense. A child's lifelong hearing was obviously more important than one IVF cycle. But the physical pain of the injections was mine to bear, and the money he took was saved from my hard work. Marcus wrapped his arms around me from behind. I know I'm letting you down. Once Leo's surgery is over, I'll make sure Hannah moves out, and we will get back on track. I didn't push him away. The man I had loved for 9 years was still holding me, his embrace as warm as ever. Yet, I knew something between us had already broken beyond repair. On the 3rd day, Hannah walked into my pharmacy holding an expired prescription. The medication she wanted required a doctor's reassessment. I slid the paper back to her. Leo has been having a hard time adjusting, and his ear was hurting again last night. Just let me buy it this once, she pleaded. I can't do that, Hannah. The dosage needs to be confirmed by his doctor. Hannah looked around at the other customers in the store, and her voice suddenly became loud and hysterical. You know Leo is in pain, and you're deliberately denying him his medicine? The prescription is expired. No pharmacy in the state can legally dispense this. She pulled out her phone, pointing the camera directly at my face. Look at this, everyone. This is my son's stepmother. She can't have kids of her own, so now she's trying to kill my son by denying him his life-saving medicine. Several customers turned to look at us. I quietly instructed my assistant to save the security footage, and then I called the police. Seeing me call the cops, Hannah immediately burst into tears, clutching Leo. Leo couldn't hear what was happening, but seeing his mother cry, he began to sob hysterically too. By the time Marcus arrived, The pharmacy was in complete chaos. He carried the crying boy outside first. Once the police finished reviewing the store cameras and left, Marcus walked back to me. "Can you delete the security footage and not press charges?" She publicly slandered me. "My corporate office has already suspended me pending an investigation," I said. "The footage proves you did nothing wrong. You'll be cleared." And Marcus looked out the window at Hannah, who was sitting in the car weeping. "She works as a preschool teacher. If this gets out, she'll lose her job. If she has no income, the cost of Leo's treatment and their living expenses will fall entirely on us. So you want me to just take the hit? I'll make her post a public apology video." I looked at him, my heart freezing. "Marcus, she literally tried to ruin my career." "I know." He held my shoulders, his voice softening into a plea. "Please, just give me a chance to handle this." That afternoon, Hannah uploaded a video on Snapchat. She claimed she had been frantic over her sick child and had misunderstood Chloe, the pharmacy manager. She didn't mention my infertility, nor did she admit to maliciously editing her video. The company lifted my suspension, but because of the public drama, they withdrew my nomination for Pharmacy Manager of the Month. Hannah kept her job. Marcus kept his promise too. His car sold for $7,000 on eBay, and he transferred the full amount back into our joint account. That night, he prepared my trigger shot. As the needle pierced my skin, his hands were trembling slightly. "Tomorrow is Leo's school open house. I need to show up so he doesn't feel left out. I'll leave by 9 and run to the hospital." "My egg retrieval starts at 8:30, I said. "I'll only stay for 40 minutes. I'll make it." I turned my head away. "Can you please not go?" Marcus was silent for a long time before shaking his head. "Leo is the only kid in his class who has never had a father show up. You've missed 7 years of his life, so of course, my procedure doesn't matter." "Chloe." He pressed the cotton ball against my skin, his voice sounding hollow. "Don't talk like that. I will make it." The next morning, I still woke up early to pack a lunchbox for Leo. He had a severe peanut allergy. I checked the ingredient list on the snack packages 3 times and tucked his EpiPen into the side pocket of his backpack. Leo stood at the kitchen door, watching me. "Chloe." "Yes, Leo." "If Daddy has a new baby, can I still come see him?" "Of course you can. Mommy said you would kick us out." I knelt down and gently adjusted his hearing aid. "Adult problems are for adults to solve. Your only job is to study, get your ears treated, and grow up happy." Leo stared at me for a long time, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small candy. "This is for you." Hannah stood in the living room, watching us with a blank expression. Before leaving, she took the lunchbox from my hands. "I'll take care of him." By 8:20 a.m., I was lying on the cold operating table. Marcus was nowhere to be seen. Just as the nurse was about to wheel me into the theater, my phone rang. The background was filled with frantic crying. "Leo went into anaphylactic shock. We're in the pediatric ER right now. Did you prepare his lunch?" Marcus's voice was wild with panic. I checked every ingredient. The doctor found peanut butter cookies in his box. I sat up abruptly, a sharp pain ripping through my bloated abdomen. I didn't pack any cookies. On the other end of the line, Hannah was hyperventilating. "Only you touched his bag, Chloe. You can hate me all you want, but what did my little boy ever do to you?" Marcus didn't wait for my explanation. "I have to stay with Leo." The line went dead. The egg retrieval couldn't be postponed. After 12 days of intense hormone shots, the timing of the procedure was calculated down to the minute. If we stopped now, everything would be ruined. I signed the consent form alone and was wheeled into the operating room. When the anesthesia wore off, the pain in my abdomen was agonizing. The recovery nurse noticed my vitals dropping. I was bleeding internally from the ovarian puncture site and needed immediate laparoscopic surgery to stop the hemorrhage. I called Marcus 3 times. No answer. On the 4th call, he finally picked up. "Leo just stabilized. I have severe internal bleeding. I need emergency surgery right now. Chloe, can you please just wait a little bit? Leo is traumatized. Every time he sees a food container, he starts screaming. I need a spouse's signature on the surgical consent form." Marcus gasped. Hannah's crying started up again in the background. "The doctor said they need to keep Leo under observation," Marcus said, his voice dropping. "Can you ask one of your pharmacy colleagues to sign for you? I'll get there as soon as I can." Before I could speak, he added one last line. "Please, Chloe, don't try to compete with the child right now." The consent form was placed in front of me. My hand shook, but I took the pen and signed my own name, stroke by stroke. Marcus finally arrived at the hospital at 11 p.m. His eyes were bloodshot as he sat down beside my bed. The doctor said Leo is out of danger. I stared at the ceiling, refusing to look at him. Hannah admitted she didn't check the lunchbox carefully. Marcus continued. "But she swears the cookies came from the container you prepared. Leo is terrified of you now." And Marcus reached out to take my hand. Once you're discharged, I think it's best if you stay in the company dorms for a couple of weeks. Once Leo calms down, I'll bring you home. I slowly pulled my hand out of his grasp. Hannah was living in my house. Her son was sleeping in my study. And I, fresh out of emergency surgery, was being exiled to a cold company dorm. Marcus opened his mouth to explain further, but I simply closed my eyes. Get out. When the door shut, the hospital room became entirely silent. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. I canceled my embryo transfer consultation for the following week, and then I opened WhatsApp to email my regional manager, requesting a transfer to our branch in the neighboring city. Once those messages were sent, I stared at the screen for a long time. 5 years ago, before my very first hormone shot, Marcus had held my hand and said, "No matter what happens, we are a family." Over the years, I had endured 97 painful injections, survived countless negative pregnancy tests, and always believed that if I just held on a little longer, we would get the baby we both dreamed of. But tonight, I finally understood. He already had his child. The only person who didn't belong in that home was me. A week later, I was discharged. My transfer request was approved immediately. A colleague went to my house to pack up my clothes and personal documents while Marcus was at work. The divorce papers were delivered directly to Marcus's office. That afternoon, I dragged my suitcase onto the train leaving the city. As the doors closed, my phone began vibrating continuously. Marcus kept calling and sending messages. "Where are you? Why didn't you wait for me to pick you up? Are you trying to threaten me with divorce again?" The final message read, "Chloe, stop throwing a tantrum. I'll come to your dorm tonight and we'll talk." I stared at the word dorm. I thought about the house that used to be ours, and how quickly all trace of me had been erased from it. As the train pulled away from the platform, I powered down my phone. From this moment on, whatever he did had absolutely nothing to do with me. The rain in Springfield was heavy and relentless when Marcus pulled his car into the parking lot of the company dormitories. It was 9 p.m. He had spent the entire evening managing Leo's post-allergic reaction tantrums at home, enduring Hannah's soft, wet sneers about how some people just aren't built to be stepmothers. His back ached, his eyes burned from exhaustion, and his heart held a heavy, uncomfortable weight that he kept trying to rationalize away. "Chloe is just hurt," he told himself as he climbed the concrete stairs to room 402. "She's emotional because of the failed cycle." Her cry, "I'll apologize about the emergency surgery, and tomorrow I'll take her to that seaside bed and breakfast she pinned on her Pinterest board 3 years ago." He knocked on the door of room 402. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. "Chloe? It's me. Open the door, please. We need to talk." A door across the hall opened, and an older woman wearing a flannel robe looked out. "If you're looking for the regional manager transfer, nobody's in there. Young man, that room was vacated at noon." Marcus froze. "Vacated?" "No, my wife. She just requested to stay here for a couple of weeks." "She didn't stay," the woman said, shaking her head. A logistics truck came by, around 1 o'clock, loaded up 2 suitcases, and she handed her key back to the building supervisor. Said she was taking the 3:15 express train out of the city. The air in Marcus's lungs vanished. He sprinted back down the stairs, ignoring the rain soaking through his wool coat, and sped toward their home. When he unlocked the front door of their 3-bedroom apartment, the smell of roasted chicken and garlic filled the entryway. Hannah was standing in the kitchen wearing Chloe's linen apron, the one Chloe had bought during their honeymoon in Provence, stirring a pot on the stove. "Marcus." Hannah looked up, offering a soft, domestic smile. "You're back early. I made dinner for us. Leo is already asleep in the study." Marcus didn't listen. He marched straight past her to the master bedroom and threw the door open. The room was immaculately tidy. The bed was made with pristine precision. But when he opened the walk-in closet, his jaw dropped. Half of the closet was completely bare. Chloe's work blazers, her winter coats, her pharmacy uniforms, her shoes, all gone. On her vanity table were dozens of skincare bottles and medical journals. Usually sat, there was only a single, silver keyring and a white legal envelope. Marcus walked over to the table on trembling legs. He picked up the envelope. Inside were 3 documents. 1. A signed divorce agreement, completely waiving her right to the apartment. And his car, asking only for her premarital savings and her personal belongings. 2. A quitclaim deed transferring her share of their joint bank account back to him. 3. A formal change of address notice from the state licensing board. At the bottom of the cover letter, in Chloe's crisp, elegant handwriting, was a single sentence. "The 97 injections were my choice. Leaving you is my salvation. Do not look for me, Marcus." Hannah stepped into the bedroom, looking at the open closet doors with a mix of shock and poorly hidden satisfaction. Did she really leave? Marcus turned around. His face was ghostly pale, his bloodshot eyes fixed on Hannah with an intensity that made her instinctively take a step back. "Where are her pharmacy journals?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously low. "The boxes on the balcony." "Oh," Hannah stammered, rubbing her arms. "The maintenance guy came by earlier to clear out the recycling. He took them. I thought, well, since she moved to the dorms, she wouldn't need those old papers." "Those weren't old papers," Marcus roared, his voice echoing off the walls, making the chandelier rattle. "Those were her study notes from 7 years of pharmacy school. That was 5 years of medical records." It was the first time in 9 years Hannah had ever heard him raise his voice like that. She flinched, her eyes instantly brimming with tears. "Marcus, I didn't know. Why are you screaming at me? I was just trying to clean up the balcony for Leo." In the study down the hall, 7-year-old Leo began to cry loudly. Usually, the sound of his son's tears would make Marcus rush over immediately, his heart melting with paternal instinct. But tonight, standing in the empty, silent bedroom that smelled faintly of Chloe's favorite jasmine soap, the sound felt like a sharp, grating blade dragging across his nerve endings. Marcus sank onto the edge of the bed, burying his face in his cold palms. He pulled out his phone and dialed Chloe's number again. "The number you have dialed has been disconnected or is no longer in service." 200 miles away, in the coastal city of Riverside, the sun was just rising over the harbor. Chloe stood on the balcony of a small, bright one-bedroom apartment on the 5th floor of a modern building. Below her, the morning tide glinted under the clear blue sky, and the crisp, salty sea breeze filled her lungs. Her abdomen was still slightly tender from the emergency laparoscopic procedure to stop her internal bleeding, but for the first time in 5 years, the heavy, suffocating bloat in her waist was gone. No hormone alarms at 7 a.m. No biohazard disposal boxes on the bathroom counter. No counting days, measuring basal temperatures, or staring at tiny, black and white ultrasound slides of empty gestational sacs. She wore a simple cotton sweater, holding a steaming mug of black coffee. Her phone chimed on the small iron table. It was an email from the HR director at Riverside General Hospital. "Welcome to the team, Manager Vance. Your orientation with the clinical pharmacy department begins at 8:30 a.m. Dr. Julian Vance will meet you in the central atrium." Chloe smiled, taking a slow, deep breath of the ocean air. When she arrived at Riverside General, the hospital was bustling with morning activity. She walked into the sunlit atrium, wearing a sharp navy suit and her newly minted hospital ID badge. A tall man in a dark charcoal coat stepped out from the executive elevators. Was in his early 30s with sharp, intelligent dark eyes behind rimless glasses, carrying a leather tablet folder. "Manager Vance?" the man asked, extending a long-fingered, immaculate hand. "I'm Julian Vance, head of clinical pharmacology." "Dr. Vance." Chloe shook his hand firmly. "It's a pleasure." Julian looked at her for a moment, his gray eyes perceptive and calm. He noticed the slight stiffness in her posture when she stepped over the threshold, a subtle sign of recent abdominal surgery that an experienced clinician would catch instantly. "I reviewed your credentials from your previous district," Julian said as they walked down the pristine glass corridor toward the pharmacy complex. "Your research on pediatric dosage adjustments for renal patients was brilliant. We're glad to have someone of your caliber taking over the department." "Thank you," Chloe said smoothly. "I'm ready to focus entirely on my work." "Good," Julian offered a small, professional smile. "Because around here we measure value by accuracy and dedication, not by politics or drama." Over the next 3 weeks, Chloe threw herself into her new life with quiet, ferocious efficiency. She reorganized the hospital's automated dispensing systems, cut prescription turnaround times by 20%, and personally supervised the compounding room for high-risk neonatal medications. Every evening, she walked home along the coastal boardwalk. She bought fresh flowers for her dining table. She attended yoga classes. She gained back 3 pounds of healthy weight. The dark circles under her eyes disappeared, and her skin regained its natural, luminous glow. She had built a life out of her own shattered pieces, and it was solid, quiet, and completely hers. Back in Springfield, Marcus's life was collapsing in slow motion. Without Chloe to manage the household expenses, order the groceries, pay the utilities, and carefully balance his monthly budget, the apartment was devolving into a chaos he had never anticipated. Marcus was an architectural designer. His work required long hours of deep concentration, drafting blueprints and attending site reviews. In the past, whenever he came home at midnight, a hot meal was always waiting under a glass dome in the fridge. His iron shirts were hung neatly in his closet, and the house was dead silent so he could rest. Now he came home to chaos. Hannah didn't know how to cook anything beyond basic frozen meals. The sink was constantly piled high with dirty dishes. Leo's toys covered every inch of the living room floor. And then came the bills. On Friday afternoon, Marcus sat at his desk, staring at his bank statement. $4,200 spent in 3 weeks. $1,800 for Hannah's designer clothes. I need to look presentable when taking Leo to his private speech therapy. Marcus. $1,200 for organic imported groceries that ended up rotting in the fridge. $1,200 for Leo's specialized private tutoring. Hannah, Marcus called out, stepping into the living room where Hannah was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her iPad. Where did the $4,000 from our joint account go? Hannah didn't even look up. I told you, Marcus. Leo's ear condition requires specialized care. And besides, since we're living together now, isn't it normal for you to support your son? Marcus clenched his fists. My car is gone. My savings are down to $6,000. The alimony papers from your ex-husband said he pays you $800 a month in child support. Where is that money? Hannah's posture stiffened. She set the iPad down, her eyes narrowing slightly. Are you auditing me, Marcus? After I gave up my life in my hometown to bring your son to you? You promised you would take care of us. I promised to pay for his ear surgery. Marcus snapped, rubbing his red-rimmed eyes. I didn't promise to fund an executive lifestyle while my wife. He stopped. The word wife hung in the air, cold and jagged. Your wife left you. Hannah sneered, her sweet, fragile persona slipping for a fraction of a second, revealing a sharp, calculating core. She threw a fit. Because she couldn't accept your biological child. She didn't love you, Marcus. If she loved you, she wouldn't have signed those divorce papers so easily. Don't speak about Chloe, Marcus hissed, pointing a finger at her. You don't have the right to utter her name. Hannah let out a harsh, mocking laugh. Fine. But don't forget, tomorrow is the final payment for Leo's ear surgery at the university hospital. If you don't pay the remaining $3,000, they will cancel his operation spot. Marcus felt a sharp, sickening knot tie itself in his gut. That evening, desperate to find an old insurance policy to cover the surgery, Marcus went into the hallway closet to pull out the metal lockbox Chloe had always kept. He found the key under a flower pot, unlocked the box, and began flipping through the documents. Inside were his tax returns, the apartment lease, and a thick blue folder marked Pediatric Allergy Records, Leo Miller. Marcus froze. He pulled out the folder. Inside was the official incident report from the elementary school open house. The day Leo went into anaphylactic shock. Attached to the medical chart was a high-resolution printout of the school cafeteria's CCTV footage, which the school principal had emailed to Marcus 2 weeks ago, but which Marcus had been too busy to review at the time. Marcus opened the file on his laptop and played the video. The timestamp read 8:12 a.m. The camera showed the hallway outside Leo's classroom. Chloe walked up, handed the neat, cloth-wrapped lunchbox to Hannah, adjusted Leo's hearing aid, gave him a small candy, and walked out toward the school gates to head to her egg retrieval procedure. 10 seconds later, after Chloe vanished around the corner, Hannah walked over to a bench near the water fountain. She unzipped the lunchbox Chloe had prepared. She reached into her own purse, pulled out a clear plastic bag containing 3 peanut butter cookies, and stuffed them directly into the side compartment of Leo's bag. Then she leaned down, whispered something into 7-year-old Leo's ear, and walked away. Marcus stared at the screen. The room went deathly silent. The video played again, and again, and again. The clear, indisputable proof flashed in high definition. Chloe hadn't packed the cookies. Chloe hadn't tried to hurt Leo. Hannah had deliberately poisoned her own son with a mild allergen just to create a panic, force Marcus to abandon Chloe at the operating table, and ruin Chloe's reputation forever. Please, Chloe, don't try to compete with a child right now. His own voice echoed in his mind, the cruel, patronizing words he had spoken to his wife while she was bleeding internally on a hospital bed, preparing to undergo emergency surgery alone. A brutal, suffocating wave of nausea hit Marcus. He stood up so fast his chair crashed backward onto the floor. Hannah, he roared, his voice sounding like a wounded animal. Get in here. Hannah ran into the study, startled by his scream. Marcus? What is wrong with you? Marcus shoved the laptop screen directly into her face. On the screen, the video was frozen on the exact frame where her hand was placing the peanut butter cookies into Leo's bag. Hannah's face instantly drained of every drop of color. Her lips parted, her hands trembling violently as she tried to back away. Marcus, listen to me. That's not what it looks like. You poisoned our son. Marcus shrieked, tears of sheer rage and horror spilling down his cheeks. You knew he had an allergy. You put those cookies in his bag so I would leave Chloe at the hospital. She was bleeding internally, Hannah. Almost died on that operating table because of your sick, twisted game. She was taking your money. Hannah screamed back, her gentle demeanor vanishing entirely, her face twisted in desperate, ugly fury. She was spending thousands of dollars on those stupid IVF shots. That money belonged to Leo. It belonged to my son. She was a barren woman who was stealing your future, and I just gave you a push to realize who really mattered. Get out, Marcus said, his voice dropping into a hollow, deadly whisper. What? Get out of my house. Right now. You can't kick us out. Hannah yelled, pulling out her phone. Leo is your biological son. If you throw us out on the street, I'll go to the press. I'll go to your architecture firm. I'll tell everyone you abandoned your sick child. Do it. Marcus took a step toward her, his eyes dark, lifeless, and filled with absolute hatred. Go to the press. Show them this video. Show the judge how you endangered a 7-year-old child to frame my wife. Let's see who goes to prison first. Hannah choked on her words. She stared at his dead eyes and realized with a sudden, terrifying certainty that he wasn't bluffing. Within 2 hours, Hannah packed her bags in a frenzy of bitter curses, dragged a crying Leo out of the apartment, and took a cab to a cheap motel near the bus station. When the front door slammed shut, the apartment fell into an absolute, suffocating silence. Marcus stood alone in the hallway. He looked at the empty guest room. He looked at the cleared balcony. He walked into the master bedroom and knelt beside the vanity table, touching the spot where Chloe's skincare bottles used to sit. He pulled out his phone and dialed the regional HR director of Chloe's pharmacy chain, a man Marcus had played golf with 2 years ago. David, Marcus begged, his voice cracking with humiliation. I need to know where Chloe transferred. Please. I'm begging you. The man on the other end let out a long, disappointed sigh. Marcus. She signed a non-disclosure privacy order regarding her relocation. But I'll tell you one thing as a friend. What? She isn't coming back, Marcus. The day she arrived at her new post, she hired the top medical malpractice and family law firm in the state. She filed a formal restraining order against you based on your neglect during her emergency medical procedure. The line went dead. Marcus sat on the cold hardwood floor of his bedroom, clutching his phone to his chest, and wept until the sun came up. 2 months later, Riverside was hosting the annual State Clinical Pharmacology Conference at the Grand Bay Hotel. Chloe sat at the head panel table in the main auditorium, wearing a tailored emerald green silk blouse and a cream pencil skirt. Her hair was styled in sleek, professional waves, and her face was radiant, healthy, and filled with absolute confidence. Beside her, Dr. Julian Vance was presenting their joint research paper on automated hospital dosage safety systems to an audience of 300 medical professionals. When the presentation concluded, the auditorium erupted into thunderous applause. Excellent work, Manager Vance, Julian murmured, offering her a warm smile as they gathered their materials from the podium. The board of directors just approved your proposal for the new regional compounding facility. Thank you, Julian, Chloe smiled, her dark eyes shining with genuine joy. It's been a great quarter. As they stepped off the stage into the grand marble lobby where attendees were mingling over coffee, a figure stepped out from behind a marble pillar. It was Marcus. Chloe stopped. Marcus looked unrecognizable. He had lost at least 15 pounds. His suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his cheeks hollow, and dark, sunken circles hung beneath his eyes. He looked like a man who had been dragged through hell. Julian noticed the shift in Chloe's posture and stepped slightly beside her, his expression cool and observant. Chloe, do you know this man? It's fine, Julian, Chloe said softly. Give me 2 minutes. Julian nodded, stepping a respectful distance away near the glass exit doors, keeping a watchful eye on them. Marcus took 3 shaking steps toward Chloe. His eyes swept over her, taking in her radiant skin, her relaxed shoulders, her flawless suit, and the utter lack of pain or exhaustion on her face. She didn't look like the woman who used to crouch on the bathroom floor with black and blue bruises on her stomach. She didn't look like the woman who cried over empty ultrasound slides. She looked like a stranger, someone brilliant, beautiful, and completely out of his reach. Chloe. Marcus breathed, his voice rough, trembling with a pathetic, desperate hope. Chloe, I found you. Chloe stood still, her hands resting calmly on her leather portfolio. Mr. Miller, you are violating the administrative contact boundary set by my attorney. The formal IC address, Mr. Miller, struck Marcus like a physical blow. Flinched, tears instantly welling in his bloodshot eyes. Chloe, please. Marcus stepped closer, his hands reaching out, but stopping midair, afraid to touch her. I know everything. I saw the cafeteria video. I know Hannah put the cookies in Leo's bag. I kicked her out, Chloe. I cut off all financial support. I filed for sole legal custody of Leo and placed him in a residential care program near his grandmother's house. He sank slightly, his knees bending as if he wanted to drop to his knees right there on the hotel marble floor. I was blind, Chloe. I was tricked. She manipulated me using the boy. I didn't know you were bleeding internally. I swear to God I didn't know it was that severe. Please come home. The apartment is clean. Your study is restored. I bought back your pharmacy journals from the recycling center. I spent 3 days sorting through the warehouse to find them. Chloe listened. She watched his tears. She heard his desperate, raspy confessions. She looked at his trembling hands, the hands that had given her 97 injections, the hands that had pushed her away when Leo gasped for air, the hands that had failed to show up when she signed her own surgical consent form. And inside her chest, there was nothing. No rai. No lingering bitterness. No sudden surge of grief. Just a vast, clean, beautiful silence. Marcus, Chloe said softly, her voice smooth as silk and clear as glass. Marcus looked up, hope flashing wildly in his hollow eyes. Yes, Chloe. Do you know why I took 97 injections? She asked quietly. Marcus blinked, confused. Because we wanted a family. No, Chloe shook her head gently. I took 97 injections because I believed that you were a man worth suffering for. I believed that our love was something rare, something sacred, something that deserved a miracle. She took a slow, deep breath, holding his desperate gaze with complete clarity. But when I lay on that operating table, clutching a pen to sign my own emergency surgery form while you told me not to compete with a child, I finally woke up. She took a step back, breaking the space between them. You weren't worth 97 shots, Marcus. You weren't even worth one. Marcus felt his heart shatter into 1,000 jagged pieces. The air in his throat cut off completely. He reached out a hand, his lips moving without sound. Chloe, please don't do this. Give me one chance, just one. My attorney sent the final decree to your office yesterday, Chloe said, her tone as polite as if she were giving directions to a stranger. Sign it, Marcus. Give yourself whatever dignity you have left. She turned her back on him. Chloe. Marcus sobbed, taking a step forward, but Julian Vance stepped smoothly into his path, his tall, imposing frame blocking Marcus completely, his expression cold and firm. Step back, sir, Julian said, his voice carrying the calm, absolute authority of a man protecting something precious. Or I will have hotel security detain you for harassment. Marcus stood frozen in the crowded, sunlit lobby. He watched as Chloe walked alongside Julian through the grand glass doors of the hotel, out into the bright, warm sunshine of Riverside, her head held high, her stride effortless and free. She never looked back. Epilogue, the sunlit horizon. 1 year later, the coastal town of Riverside was blooming with early spring flowers. Chloe stood in the sun-drenched courtyard of the new Vance Miller Clinical Research Center, a state-of-the-art facility she had co-founded with Julian and the hospital board. She wore a tailored white lab coat, holding a clipboard, discussing the trial parameters for a new non-invasive fertility support protocol with a team of young researchers. Her body was healthy, strong, and completely healed. 3 months ago, during her annual wellness checkup, her gynecologist had looked at her ultrasound with a gentle smile and said, "Your ovarian tissue has completely recovered from the trauma, Chloe. You are in perfect health." Chloe hadn't felt the urge to jump back into IVF. She had learned a truth that 5 years of painful injections had hidden from her. Her value as a woman was never defined by her ability to produce a child. For a man who didn't cherish her, her value was inherent, unshakable, and entirely her own. Manager Vance. Julian walked into the courtyard, holding 2 cups of iced tea, handing one to her. The state medical board just published our paper. We received the National Innovation Award. Chloe took the tea, her lips curving into a radiant, genuine smile. That's wonderful news, Julian. Julian looked at her, his dark eyes filled with a deep, quiet affection that had grown naturally over months of shared work, mutual respect, and unspoken understanding. He reached out, gently tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Dinner tonight to celebrate? Julian asked softly. My sister opened that new Italian place by the pier. I'd love that, Chloe replied, her heart feeling light, warm, and utterly peaceful. Across the state, in Springfield, Marcus sat alone in a tiny rented studio apartment. His architecture career had taken a massive hit after his public divorce and the scandal surrounding his family. His car was gone, his big apartment sold to pay off debts, and he spent his evenings drinking cheap whiskey, staring at a framed, faded photo of Chloe taken during their honeymoon 9 years ago. Hannah had sued him for child support, but after court-ordered DNA tests and forensic evaluations, The court granted Marcus restricted visitation, while Hannah was placed on probation for child endangerment. Every month, Marcus sent a check for Leo's care, but he never went to see her. Every night, he opened his phone and looked at the single photo he had saved from the Riverside Hospital newsletter. A photo of Chloe standing on a sunlit stage, receiving her national award, radiant, thriving, and happy. He would trace her face on the cold glass screen with his thumb, weeping in the quiet room until the lights went out. He had wanted a son. He had wanted to be a hero. He had sacrificed the woman who had bled 97 times for him, only to end up with an empty house, a shattered life, and the agonizing knowledge that he had thrown away a diamond to pick up a stone. And far away, under the bright, clear sky of Riverside, Chloe walked alongside Julian toward the ocean, her laughter echoing in the warm sea breeze, moving forward into a future that was entirely, beautifully her own.